Jordan, what's happening?
What's up, Sam? How you doing from a distance?
I'm good, man. Lockdown. It's like that lockdown defense, except now it's a lifestyle.
Yeah, man. It's gotta be. Stay inside.
That's it. So, super excited to have our guest on today, Rob Markman. Rob is the VP of Content Strategy at Genius. You guys are probably well aware of Genius, incredible media company, kind of started as like a annotation and lyrics website, but really continued to grow, bringing a layer of genius to the internet. Whether it's different songs or interviews, I think that their content is world class. From Rob's talk show For the Record to Verified, where they have artists come on and talk about their own songs and deconstruct the lyrics, and then to Deconstructed, where producers are breaking down and showing how they went about producing and creating some of the hardest beats to your favorite records. So I think they're just a very innovative company, and I think Rob is largely behind a lot of that innovation on the content side. I think content today is more important than it ever has been, not only if you're a media company, but if you're an artist. Whatever facet of the business you're in, there's no denying the value of content. So to be able to have Rob on to talk about the importance of storytelling, what makes a great interview, how to think about what effective content is, how to go about testing different types of content, what data he's using to inform different decisions around content strategy. I think it's all invaluable information. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I thought it was great. Rob's obviously been in the music industry for a long time in a few different ways. One of them obviously being print journalism and journalism in the early 2000s. And honestly, I think, the editorial and news cycle now is completely different. Rob's been through it the entire time. So we just get to know not only his origins, but, what it was like to be a music journalist when he started versus now, how he think that's affected music journalism. He's got some great sound advice for people who want to get into music journalism who are music journalists just on interviewing that I thought was great. And like I say every time, I always am a fan of people who do more than one thing. And Rob also has a hip hop career, and I get a lot of questions of people all the time. If they are a musician, including myself. I started as a musician and then got into the industry because I felt like I had to choose. And Rob has been able to coexist between both. So for people who feel like they're not necessarily sure on which side they want to go to, he uncovers some of that as well. So just a lot of gems in this episode, man, and very excited for people to hear it.
And if you haven't already, on the date of recording this, Rob just dropped his new record, Good Friday, on all streaming platforms. So if you haven't already, be sure to check it out. But without any further ado, Mr. Rob Markman.
Rob, man, how you doing? Thanks for coming to Music Business Podcast, first quarantine edition.
Wow, this is the first one. This is the first quarantine
Yeah,
edition.
yeah.
Wow, we making history right here. Nah, thank you for having me. There's been like minimal human contact through this whole thing, and I got my family here, and it's cool. But it's great to have human contact, man. So I kind of feel like I'm getting out of the house right now. You see, I got my
I love it.
Yeah, yeah. Just a quick check-in. Sam, you're in Brooklyn. You're in BK.
Yep, Bed-Stuy.
I'm in New Jersey. So we're all over the place here. This is cool though. This is cool.
I'm in Staten Island, so we hit the trifecta. They say it usually
Yeah.
goes Brooklyn, Staten Island, and then Jersey.
Right, right.
I'm a Brooklyn cat though, man. It's Brooklyn. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, so.
Tight. So I guess for the people that are just hearing of you, how did you get into music journalism? What was sort of your first foray into it?
Yeah, it was about 2004. I'm paint the picture for you. It was about 2004. Print magazines was still a thing. You know what I'm saying? It's all the rage.
Like Kanye was new.
Kanye was just a producer. You know what I'm saying? He just learned Kanye the rapper. My first assignment was for Complex Magazine when it was actually a magazine. Complex is now known more as a website, but it started out as a magazine that Mark Echo started. And it might have been like their third or fourth issue. And, they were new and they were figuring things out. So everything was brand new. And a man, Tim Hotep, who was one of my best friends. We went to high school together. We went to college together, man. We lived together for a while, just like really solid dude. They needed somebody to do a Jadakiss album review. And just because we went to school together, he knew, and we were friends, he knew I knew a whole lot about hip hop. And he knew that I could write. He knew that I was like a good writer just being in classes and stuff like that. So he hired me as a freelancer to do a Jadakiss album review. And it was Jadakiss's second album, and they drove me up to Yonkers. They had a car waiting for me. This is when the labels had budgets. Interscope sent a car to Yonkers, took me back to Brooklyn. And that was like my first freelance piece. And it was cool because at the time I just had a regular job. I had a college degree and a regular job, and I worked in the mailroom somewhere. And, that wasn't what I wanted to do with my future. And when this prospect of like being a music journalist, like I got my first taste of it. And I said, oh, once my foot is in the door, they're going to have to take me out of here kicking and screaming.
Right.
So, I one freelance opportunity snowballed into two. That 2 turned into 4, that 4 turned into 8. And I started making a reputation for myself amongst editors from The Source and Vibe and Double XL. And, I was working in the mailroom in the day and doing freelance work for different hip hop magazines at night.
So what was like your first interview that you can remember where you were like, oh shit, I'm interviewing this person? Or like, oh, damn.
My first interview was for the first one that I did, or the first one. Well, it was probably one and the same. Look, my first interview, it was over the phone. I remember I had to buy a phone recorder. Like, I didn't know any of this. Like, I was just doing album reviews, and then Scratch Magazine was a magazine by Harris Publications. It was like the sister magazine to Double XL at the time. And while Double XL focused on the rappers, Scratch Magazine's purpose was to focus on the DJs and the producers. So they were putting producers on the cover. So they were just launching this magazine. It was the first issue. And Andre Torres was the editor-in-chief at the time. And I reached out to him to see if he had any work. And he said, man, I need somebody to interview Easy Mo B. And Easy Mo B, for those who don't know, was Biggie's producer. Puff gets a lot of credit, as he rightfully should, for producing Biggie. But Biggie's first album, Ready to Die, which was a classic, it was almost split down the middle, where Puff kind of helmed one side and Easy Mo B did the other side. Easy Mo B did like all the street joints, and Puff did all the stuff that you heard on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
So he needed somebody to interview Easy Mo B. So I went to Radio Shack. I bought a tape recorder and the apparatus that helps hook it up to the phone, and I interviewed Easy Mo B. And after I turned that assignment in, he said, well, I got another one for you. Do you want to interview The Alchemist, the producer of The Alchemist?
Wow.
That
was your second one?
That was my second one.
Dang.
Going to the studio and interview The Alchemist. So that was dope. And funny now I think about it, it actually comes full circle, because I'm interviewing The Alchemist tomorrow on my show on Genius, for the record.
Wow.
He just dropped the project with Conway. I hadn't interviewed him since. Obviously, we've known each other and we've seen each other since then, but I've interviewed him that one time, and now maybe 16 years later, I'm interviewing him again.
That's amazing. So when did you get involved with Genius? Because I used to be in the tech startup world, and I remember when Genius teamed up with like Ben Horowitz, the investor, and they were on this mission to like annotate the internet. But since then, it's also really just kind of gone on. I don't know if that's necessarily still the vision, but it's become this like super relevant, thriving, awesome media brand that's putting out some really incredible content, very proactive when it comes to this kind of like new media, digital media landscape. How did you kind of get linked up with Genius, and how did your role develop into what it is now?
Yeah, so I joined Genius in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And, basically like my career went from freelance journalist, and then I got a staff position at Scratch Magazine, and then the staff position at Double XL. And then I moved over to MTV. So, that's how I spent between 2004 and 2015. I developed myself a reputation as a journalist, but through that, I got a lot of connections to artists themselves, to label people, to managers. And when I joined Genius in 2015, for the most part, it was a website and an app, and they were doing stuff in the content field then. But for the most part, what people knew it for was this just cool website where you could look up lyrics. And, we kind of seen that before, right? OLA, OH, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I always mess up the acronym, but the home of the original lyric site, and there was a bunch of other lyric sites. So we've seen lyric sites before, but what was cool about Genius is not only could you look up the lyrics, there was community who would provide annotation and provide insight to what these lyrics meant. So primarily, right, that's what Genius was known for. When I joined in 2015, there was this real push to create content around lyrics and music and meaning. And so I was the first hire of what we now call the content team. And then Brendan Frederick came through, who's our chief content officer, and he really, we had like some vision, and he really had vision and structure on how to structure and build the whole content team out and get us to where we are now, man. And when we talk about the Genius content, is video is what we're most known for. I think most people know us for Verified, the video with the yellow background. But we have Deconstructed, which is a video for producers, and I have my talk show For the Record, and we have Between the Lines and open mics and a whole bunch of video series, but also social content is doing very well. Our editorial content does very well. We have a partnership with Spotify. So to your, you said that first the mission was to annotate the world, and I feel like that has changed a little bit. It's not the tagline anymore that we use, but it's still kind of the mission. We just want a level of genius, a layer of genius wherever you're at. If you're listening on Spotify, you can listen to our Behind the Lyrics feature, and you can get a layer of genius. Or if you're on YouTube, you can watch our videos. Or if you're on our app, you can use the site as it was originally intended. So it's grown, man, and I've been blessed to be a part of it.
That's amazing, man. And I mean, I live and breathe content too, just for some context on our end. Like, I help artists often like create a bunch of content, but I often reference like the content you're doing and like Deconstructed. I mean, you guys have come up with some really unique series on the video front, and not to downplay any of the other stuff outside of the video front, but can you talk a little bit about how you go about developing different ideas for different series?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and it's a team effort. And it's just like not being afraid of the good idea, and also letting things grow organically. Verified, for example, grew into that. Our first kind of what we call our pilot episode of Verified, or like the idea, was Designer and Panda. So when Panda came out, it was the #1 record in the country. Everybody loved it. Nobody knew what he was saying. I'm not even talking about, I'm not talking about meaning. I'm not talking about intent. Nobody verbally knew what he was saying. It was like, what are the words to this song? So we had Designer come through, and we said, yo, can you just read us the lyrics, like very slowly, and we'll put them on the screen beside you. And we were like, okay, what are we going to shoot this on? And we just had this yellow paper, the Genius logo color is yellow. So we had a seamless yellow background. So we say, we'll use this. And we put it up, and man, I think that got 25 million hits. Like, I remember we put it up, and I got home, and we all felt good about it. And I was home, and it was maybe about 9-10 o'clock at night. I'm sitting on the couch watching TV. All of a sudden, I just scream, and I wake up the whole house, and my wife is like, yo, what's going on with you? Kim Kardashian just tweeted the Panda video. We lit. We out of here. I got the Kim Kardashian tweet, and it was over after that. But that's just one part of Verified. We didn't even have him explain the lyrics. At that point, it hadn't occurred to us. And then not too long after that, we had a songwriter by the name of Ingrid, who is down with Parkwood, Beyonce's label, come through, and she had wrote the lyrics for Love Drought, a song off of Lemonade. And everybody assumed that was a song, and for Beyonce, because she interpreted it and made it into a love song, but was like almost like a breakup song between her and Hove, or kind of where do we go now, is real relationship based. And Ingrid came, and she explained her part in writing her parts of the song, the parts that, because Beyonce contributes as well, but Ingrid, the base of the song came from this writer named Ingrid, and she described her intent of what she meant by the lyrics, you know what I mean? And it gave a whole different view into songwriting, into the song. So she was explaining the lyrics. We didn't have her perform it like Designer. We was like, just explain it. And that video took off. And then we kind of looked at it, and we was like, well, we put the two things together, we got something. The reason why I share that story is that the idea evolved, is what I'm saying. We weren't afraid to try things. We weren't afraid when something didn't work or we needed to add something else on. We weren't afraid to tinker with it. So we got, what we have now. And there were a lot of bad ideas. Like, I'm not afraid to say Verified is a great name for a series. It works. It's our flagship. my hip hop ass, I wanted to call it "So What You Saying." off of like EPMD. Look, I even got the EPMD record behind me. I could show you, because I'm just like a hip hop. And I was like, oh, we can just call it "So What You're Saying" because nobody knows what the is saying. I thought it was a good idea.
I like that, but I feel you.
Right. Nah, like it was a good idea, right? And it was a good idea for the time, but
yeah,
I don't think that has the longevity of what Verified has. So, it's teamwork, it's throwing ideas against the wall, it's trusting each other, it's putting your ego to the side, it's getting out your own way and just doing the thing that people love. You know what I'm saying? And luckily we got there, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's amazing. So when it comes to like using data, how do you guys use data to inform your content strategy? I know it's like a super broad question, but like when it comes, I mean, because obviously you're constantly trying to tweak and innovate. And even if you got like one super cool series, you're trying to like double down on various things that are making this series perform really well. Yeah.
Look, there's no secret on the internet, man. Success on the internet is a popularity contest. There's times when you strike gold and you just have like really good content, really good storytelling, and there's across the board. There's not synonymous with genius, but sometimes like there's no substitute for a good story. So I always feel like a great story is always going to win when you're making content. But when it's a popularity contest, so data becomes important for everybody, and I think where you win is when you combine that data with that old school gut feeling. Like we're music people, so at the same time, sometimes there's things that are popular, just like, oh my God, this is never gonna work. It's hard. I don't care how many millions of views this has. This is terrible. And then sometimes you can see people buy views too, or buy data. Like numbers lie. You know what I'm saying? Like that old men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. Numbers lie. You know what I'm saying? But numbers can also be a guide, and the data could be a guide. So we use the data to guide us, and then we just use kind of our gut and does what feels good. And we look at it in a whole bunch of different ways on the site. We could see, we can every day we could see what songs are the most popular on the Genius site. You can see it too. It's when you log on to genius.com, it's on the front page. But we have data. I could tell you what's the one lyric in that one song that everybody is looking up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We can kind of go and play with it in that way. So yeah, we use the data. The data informs our best decisions is what it is. So it's like we don't run from data. We use the data, and then we make our best decisions based off of that.
But it's, from what I'm hearing, you obviously have to bring towards a holistic approach through every decision that you guys make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So obviously, since, Kanye was just a producer, music journalism has changed a lot. What do you think are some of the most significant changes? We're kind of getting into some of them right now with just talking about data and how it informs things. The significant changes that you see in editorial and the news, and how you've kind of had to change your mindset over the years.
Just in general?
Yeah. So obviously, a huge one is the shift over to digital, but there's obviously a bigger shift to video content as well. And it, some of the websites that I used to check every day for news now have kind of faded away, and some of the ones that have stuck are at least in my opinion, a little bit closer to editorial and not necessarily just like regular news. And it seems like every year as technology gets bigger and bigger, the editorial and news cycle obviously changes with it.
Yeah.
So, since you started at Complex to what you're doing now, what are some just different things that you've had to do to get used to everything going on?
No doubt. And just to clarify, I only freelanced at Complex, and I always make that clear because of Complex is like a fraternity. I love them. I got a lot of friends at Complex. I'm not part of. I don't got the Complex tattoo.
Right.
But I think the number one change, I think the mistake that print made is, I was at print magazines, and I think print for the most part didn't embrace digital soon enough. The one thing you can never stop is technology. Like we could be stuck. Like I love magazines. I love the way hip hop used to be. I love how things used to be, right? But you're never gonna stop technology. My analogy for that is like, have you ever seen the old Austin Powers movie? There's a scene where a guy is coming with a steamroller, and he's coming to steamroll the guy, and he's like 200 feet away, and the guy's just standing there. No, stop! Don't. Instead of getting out the way, he's just like standing there trying to like. You're gonna get steamrolled if you just stand there. Like technology is the steamroller. If you just stand in front of it, it's going to run you over. You know what I'm saying? And I think the one of the big mistakes that print made was not adjusting and embracing digital soon enough, and digital took over. You know, I remember being at Double XL and arguing. We would do a cover story, and was like, "Yo, let's put it online," and they'll be like, "Nah, we can't put it online. That's like giving the content away for free." You know, eventually advertisers shifted anyway. You can sell ads against that still, so you can still monetize against that. It's just not having the vision. And I think in that process, I think the written word got devalued. You know, when let's say just the process of print, right? Let's say you and me, Jordan, we both got an opportunity to interview Jay-Z same day, press junket style. I go in the room, I get my interview, I come out, you go in, you get your Jay-Z interview, right? So same day we interview Jay-Z. And I work for print and you work for digital. You can get that up. You could get that transcribed and get a Q&A up in 24 hours, less. You know what I'm saying? The print cycle was usually about 30 days, you know, once a month. So we could have the same information. You just were able to get it up faster than I was if I was working print. But the advantage to print was you get a really good story. Like you're turning it around quickly. Normally in print, I'd go through 3 rounds of edits. I turn in the draft. The editor say, okay, this is good, but I need you to change this, and this. He'd send it back. She'd send it back. You know, I'd make the corrections, submit it again. Editor will send it back again. Like you'll get a story really tight. And then after a couple of rounds between you and the editor, then it goes to a fact checker to make sure all the facts is correct. Because that's a real problem on the internet now. There's not a lot of fact checking going on. Then it goes to a copy editor to make sure your grammar is correct. Because that's also a problem on the internet with the speed, the quality of our writing is diluted. But that process is expensive. You know what I'm saying? I know a lot of sites that writers, especially the blog sites, writers are just posting it themselves without an editor. You know what I mean? And so you lose a lot. But, you know, it was expensive to do print and it took a lot of steps. But, you know, speed and technology always wins. But, you know, one of the things I think is we lost the quality. I feel for these young writers. Like, I became such a good writer because I was challenged by editors. I knew they were going to pick my story apart, and I would have had to rewrite it 3 times before it was even suitable to print. A lot of these writers these days don't get challenged like that because there's just no time, and these places don't have it in the budget to edit them. So, I mean, one of the things that's changed is the quality. The speed is great, and the way we get information is amazing. It's a plus. We lose some of the quality for some of the sites that don't take it as seriously is a negative.
Yeah.
To me.
When you think about like changes and not being resistant to change, but being open and having foresight and leaning into change, obviously there was like a seismic shift when it came from like print to digital. But I mean, right now, looking forward to the next couple of years, and even like not even just the next couple of years, like right now, quarantine's like. What are different things you think we should be conscious of or lean into when we're looking at this next wave of digital media?
I think storytelling is going to become more important, and I think quality of storytelling. I mean, obviously, with this quarantine, we haven't quite figured out the quality of. We're doing the best we can, right? We're using Zoom. I hope I didn't give away your guys' secret.
Yeah, damn son, blowing up our spot out here, right? No, no, I feel you.
But it's great. But you know, even Genius, we're going to be using Zoom to record some of these things, which is not. I don't know what camera we use, but the Sony camera that we use, like there's a quality, right? That's fine. I think the audience forgives that. I think what the audience is going to start to crave is the quality of storytelling. And the heart in it. I think for a long time, creators have gotten away with. Can I curse on this?
Yeah,
no?
please.
I don't. All right. I think for a long time, a lot of creators, a lot of have gotten away with putting out bullshit, like for real, like and just cheap clicks, and headline first, and you're almost just selling you a headline, and when you click in, there's no substance at all.
Right.
And I think the audience is getting way smarter than that, and I think because there's so much content out there, the audience are going to be a lot more economical with their clicks, and they're going to click shit that's worth their time. We're wasting a lot of people's time with the content that you see just like on social media and just like the cheap shit that we do. And when I say we, I'm talking about the collective we.
Yeah.
Right.
The collective we as journalists, like, man, everybody has to step it up. And what's the stories that you can tell? And so I think storytelling is going to become more important than ever. And,
Right. One thing I've always wondered about is obviously with the invention of social media, a lot of artists can tell a lot of their own story via their Instagram, their Twitter, their Facebook, or any way that they, communicate directly to fans. Do you think that there's been a shift in the way that people have had to approach editorial because of that? So, somebody can put on their Instagram a little short story about their father that may have been in a long form interview in Fader or something like that. Do you think that it's changed editorial in the way that people think about it, or not necessarily?
Yes and no. I think the really good there's artists who are just really engaged. Do you hear me? I'm good. Connection is good.
Yeah.
Okay. There are artists that are really engaged and really great storytelling across the board. But there are a lot of artists that struggle with that still. A lot of artists, if we're talking about musical artists, can go and tell you in the booth and make a song about it, but can't quite express it over social media. It comes out wrong sometimes. So I think a lot of artists need help with that. They're like, it's a skill, I'll give you an example. I won't name names, but I had an artist come through and I had a producer come through, and we wanted to shoot Decrustructed with him, and he just wanted all types of editing approval and just wanted the rights to it, and like he wanted to run the show, and we were down to work with him, but at the same time, it's like, yo, if you're coming to us, you got to trust us that we know how to tell this story. Ultimately, he decided I could just do this myself in my own studio. I don't really need you guys to do it. And he did it. It just didn't come out as good. Like, if I'm being honest, like, and it's not a credit. This is an amazing artist. This was an amazing producer. It's not a discredit to him, but his superpower was making the music. Our superpower is the storytelling. You know what I mean? And it's cool. Like, I respect his decision. Like, we're cool. Like, there's no smoke, there's no static, there's no nothing. But artists need that help too, because there's a lot that goes into an artist, man. And then sometimes too, like, things just come across wrong. I see a lot of times a lot of artists like try to tweet something and it just gets taken the wrong way. And it's like, man, what's the best way to tell the story? What's the most effective way to tell the story? And sometimes it's not in 240 characters. Sometimes it's not 15 seconds at a time on your IG stories.
When you think about, I mean, obviously this is a big underlying thread, and I think because it's so critical, but like storytelling, a great story, like when you think about the stories you're trying to craft and communicate, like what to you comprises a great story?
I was literally going to ask that question next. We got some sort of brain trust going on here, Sam.
That's good. That's a good tandem right there, man. That's like, you got the one. I think intent and purpose. I think timelessness. I think when you get to the heart of the matter, I like to say, like, I really enjoy artists across the board who get to the heart of the matter, right? And sometimes, listen, man, sometimes the song is good because it's a vibe, right? Oh my God, that was a vibe. And there's room for that. But, I think the style of music changes so very quickly. The timelessness that comes with music particularly is the intent that goes into it, the heart that you put into it. Sometimes sometimes it's a bunch of ad-lib. Like, sometimes, look, if you think about a trap song, sometimes, again, it's a vibe. The ad-libs is popping, that gets you, and that's where we are right now. But the songs that you're gonna remember 20 years from now are the songs that you remember past the ad libs, past the A, past the it's lit. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you really saying? It's the reason why artists like Bob Marley still resonate to this day. It's a reason why artists like Stevie Wonder still resonate to this day. You know what I'm saying? It's a reason why disco died out. You know, like there's some, you know, it's just like a style of music. So getting to the heart of the matter is really what excites me and what I look for. Artists who get to the heart of the matter.
I like that a lot.
But you got also too, and I don't want to sound contradictory, but you got to be in the moment too. Like you got to not be afraid to be in the moment. Like let's go to the party. Like you know, there's certain joints that just, you know, will always remind you of a good time. And we want to cover that too, and we want to be involved in that too, because that's storytelling too. But you know, eventually you're gonna have to get to the heart of the matter, or it just turns into disco music.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, you've obviously interviewed a lot of people so far. What do you think? This question's kind of twofold. What do you think a good interviewer does when they interview their subject, and then what do you think a good interviewee is when they're interviewed? How do you think that chemistry is, and how do they both excel at what they're doing?
It goes back to that. It goes back to that thing that I was saying again. And I think all kind of content, whether it's music, whether it's movie, whether it's a good book, whether it's a good interview, is good storytelling, right? So as being an interviewer, you know, when I sit with you, I there's a story that when we sit down, there's a story that I hope we tell. There's a way that I hope we resonate to the people. I hope to get to the heart of the matter. I don't want to ask you questions that everybody asked you. You know, I don't want I kind of want to get into your brain. Like I want to get into your heart. Like, you know, and sometimes it surprises you. Like I interviewed, Future is a tough interview. You know what I'm saying? And no disrespect, I got a lot of love for Future. I've been interviewing Future for years, like from the mixtape era Future, before Pluto. I was interviewing Future when I was at MTV. And I don't think it's a secret that he don't let a lot of people in. Like Future's just not gonna open up to you. You know what I'm saying? And I did an interview with him around the release of his Wizard album. I guess that was 2019, at the top of 2019. And we're talking, and all of a sudden we just get into this conversation about lean. I wasn't even necessarily planning to go there because I didn't know what he was about to say. But he had said to me in an interview that he had quit drinking lean, which was dope. But he also said how he was kind of afraid to tell the audience and tell his fans because he felt like that's what they expected of him. So would that change their perception? It was like no pun intended, it was a sobering moment. Because one, I wasn't expecting it, but that came out of natural conversation. But, you know, we got to the heart of the matter. That was dope. Those are the type of things that I live for, to have those very real conversations with artists in that way. And you know, I'm trying to think of other examples like that, but you know, you just kind of want to make a connection with who you're interviewing,
right?
And as an interviewee, you know, as somebody who sits down, it's like I've had artists that when the cameras are off, we get along fine. There's no beef. There's no smoke. When the cameras come on, some people just aren't talkers. And, you know, I think as somebody being interviewed, you have to want to open up in some way. Like you got to give something. You know, sometimes I've been there sometimes and it's been like a dentist pulling teeth. And I'm just like, yo, we're wasting each other's time. Like, if you didn't come here to talk, don't. I didn't ask you for your social security number. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain things I think I'm pretty respectful with the way that I approach things. But you know, you got to come willing to talk. And if you're not a person who isn't good at conversation, then decline the interview. It's cool. Like, I promise I won't get offended. You know.
Right. No, I mean, I think too that just that notion of vulnerability, even when we're working with artists and helping them just create content for their own socials, it's like whenever they are getting to, like how you framed it, to the heart of the matter and being vulnerable, like that's where like human connection occurs, and that happens offline but online too. So being able to, from an interview perspective, like draw that out and create the environment where somebody's comfortable to bring that vulnerability, it's critical.
And just being honest too, and vulnerability doesn't mean, again, because I'm not trying to make an Oprah episode. I'm not trying to make you cry during the interview every time. Even though
come here, Future. You could lean on my shoulder.
Tears are good for ratings, though. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to cry in an interview, go ahead.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I remember I did an interview with Miley Cyrus back when I worked at MTV backstage at the VMAs, and she cried.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit. I
This
didn't
one's
know
gonna
what
go.
Yeah. I didn't even know what to do in the moment. But, I had an interview with Nicki Minaj at Genius in front of a live audience where we were breaking down her lyrics. And there was vulnerability there too. And it wasn't necessarily a crying moment, but like her being able to tell us, like, even something like I had asked her, if you listen to a lot of Nicki Minaj, she has a lot of sports references. And a lot of basketball references. So I'm like, yo, Nicki is she really be like watching, NBA on TNT. She's just like us. Yeah. So I started asking about the sports references, and Nicki was honest. She was like, listen, one, her boyfriend at the time, I think she was dating Meek. She was honest. She was like, oh, I was dating, I asked about a specific line, I forgot what it was. She was like, I was dating Meek at the time. Whenever we be in the house, Sports Center will always be on. So I pick up certain things from Sports Center. It's just wordplay. And then what I don't know, I just Google. Like, she was honest. It wasn't, so I'm saying it's very different from the Future moment of saying, hey, I quit lean and I don't know how to communicate this to my fans. It was just her being honest about how she comes up with lyrics. And that's another form of vulnerability. So that's what I'm saying. It doesn't always have to be this Oprah moment. Right. But like, yo, you're fucking Nicki Minaj. Your life is interesting. Tell us something. And the other thing is that some interviewers suck. Like, let's just be real. Like, you also have to know how to ask engaging questions to pull that thing out. Because if I'm on a press run and, you ask me, oh, who's featured on your album? And I just answered that question for the 100th time. And plus you can look it up. Look up the track list, and it's like, what are we here for? So a lot of interviews got to step it up too, because a lot of y'all ask terrible ass questions. You guys are amazing. This is fun. Like, you know what I'm saying?
He's just saying that for the camera, Jordan. No, I appreciate that and totally agree, man. When it comes to like, what have been some of the most fun? I mean, you just referenced a couple, but like, what have been some of the most fun, memorable interviews outside of the ones you referenced? And maybe it doesn't have to be like the super deep ones, but just shit where crazy stuff happened or and you lit up.
Nicki Minaj for sure was one that we did at Genius, Genius level. Mariah Carey was one that we did at Genius, and we called it Genius Level. It was part of our Genius Level series. That was a live interview, and Mariah, because I had such a crush on Mariah as a kid. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, yo, I'm here now. Like,
I made it.
And besides that, the respect that I also have for the time.
She
actually is a dope songwriter. And she was so humble and gracious. I interviewed Babyface for Genius, one of the early episodes of For the Record. That was probably the interview where I got nervous. Like, I was real nervous. Because we were in his studio. And when we were going to the room, you got to walk through this hallway, and the hallway had record plaques literally from the floor. Like, they're hung on the wall, but they're touching the floor all the way to the ceiling, both sides on this long, skinny hallway. And you know the breadth of Babyface's work, like if you're into music, but walking down that hall, like, you see it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this dude wrote you know how many records he wrote that kids have been conceived to? Like, he wrote every love song in the 90s, like every love song that mattered.
Yeah.
And speaking to him was crazy, and he was incredibly gracious and just like, he could have had every reason to just stunt and be there like, I'm Babyface, what? And he was just a human being. That was dope. I had a 2015 interview that I did with Kendrick Lamar when I was at MTV. I think that was probably the best interview of my career. That was a great moment. Shout out to Kendrick. That was right after his To Pimp a Butterfly album. And I think, I think that a lot of people consider that the definitive Kendrick Lamar interview. I'm real proud of that one. man, the list goes on. I got to interview. I wasn't on camera for this, right? This was MTV before they let me be on camera. I was off camera, but I got to interview all the New Edition at one time, including Bobby Brown and Johnny Gill. Like, it was like all the New Edition. I'm like, and this is like, I'm like, how come I don't have a picture of this for the gram? Like, what was I thinking? Like, I was stunned every Throwback Thursday. I've interviewed Hove before. Jay-Z is my favorite artist, so that's always great. Lil Wayne interviews are always fun.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to like the networking side, because I know on one side you run and largely run the kind of the content strategy and content over at Genius, but on the other side, I mean, and a lot of your experience there and responsibility is around like artist relations. Like when it comes to like developing, nurturing, connecting, and building these relationships, how do you do it, or what are things that are top of mind that because a lot of people that are listening they're trying to network with each other, network with people above their weight class.
It's the same thing. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but it's like, be a human being. Don't be a dick. Don't like. I developed for better or for worse, for better for me. I don't know, but I feel like I've developed this reputation. I'm early on a lot of artists. And Genius, in total, the team is also early. A lot of people's first interviews are through Genius on Verify. You know what I'm saying? But even when I was at XXL, I was always early on a lot of artists because it was just being a fan of the music, right? And great music doesn't always come with a platinum plaque.
Right.
Sometimes it's seeing somebody's potential. Like, I was able to get that Kendrick Lamar interview from To Pimp a Butterfly when he already blew up, is because I was already doing interviews with him when he had Section 80 and the Kendrick Lamar EP. Like, the relationship started there. Wiz Khalifa, I did a mixtape for Wiz Khalifa, Taylor Allderdice, where I'm interviewing him for skits in between each song on his mixtape. And everybody always tells me how much they love that interview and that mixtape. But that relationship started in 2007 when I was interviewing Wiz Khalifa before Cushion Orange Juice, before Flight School. You know what I'm saying? So just because he was dope. So, I think a lot of people in media, but in music in general, wait for an artist to blow up, wait for those million streams, wait for somebody else to co-sign instead of just saying what's dope. And I think great relationship building means not being afraid to put your reputation on the line and admit when you like something, even when there's maybe no apparent reason to like it. But it's just the music is good. Right now, I'm DMing Honest Truth right before we jumped on. There's an artist that I love. Her name is Lady London. And she's a rapper. And she, you would think she's like, Megan Thee Stallion status, the way, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a fan of hers. Her output isn't there yet, but she has this potential. She has a way of doing things that I really like. And so I'm not afraid to just DM her, like, yo, I fuck with what you have going on. There's not anything that I can do for her right now. But it's like, let's talk. Let's develop the relationship. And when it's time, it's time. That's how it happened with me and Nikki. And I think a lot of people in the industry are afraid or aren't paying attention or feel like it isn't worth their time. Like, I still listen. I don't have all the time in the world, but when people DM me music, I still listen, whether you have a verified check mark or not, because if the next Jay-Z comes across and is in my DMs, like, I don't want to miss that.
Right.
Like, that's how me and Russ developed a relationship like that. Russ would just tweet his music to me. And one day I listened and I was like, yo, this is really good. And Russ, if you know anything about Russ, he's changed a lot now, but during his come up, he had a chip on his shoulder because he remembered all the journalists and the people in media who used to send his music and they used to brush him off. And, I don't think that was right either, but, for him to kind of have that chip, but he had a chip on his shoulder. He ain't forget. So when he blew up, he said, man, I remember who was reaching out when, nobody was reaching out. And we kind of developed our relationship from then, just because I thought the music was good. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but it's just like, be a fan of the music and be human and take your ego out of it.
I was speaking to one of my mentors this year, and I was saying that networking is a necessary evil, and she said, "What do you think is evil about it?" And I said, "The fact that people aren't as human as I would like them to be when I network a lot." And she was like, "Well, have you just tried to be human with them?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She was like, "Just ask them how their day is. Like, just ask them what they ate for dinner the night before. Like, don't be weird about it." And then literally since that moment, when I do hang out with people and I do network with people, it's a little bit less of, what type of stuff you working on, and just like, tell me about your life. Like that counts too. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
just being human with people and connecting with people,
Yeah, I remember shit. Now that you mentioned that, like I remember, and he probably doesn't remember this at all, but I haven't interviewed Drake in years, since I was at MTV. Because who gets to interview Drake anymore anyway? But I haven't interviewed Drake in years. I remember one time I interviewed him, and it was a phone interview. It was back when I was at Double XL, and the publicist connected us. And I asked him that. I was just like, "Yo, man, how's your day, man? You good?" And he was like, "Yo, nobody's asked me that." Like, you know what I'm saying? He was like, "Yo, that's crazy." And this was maybe like this was like the Thank Me Later era. This is like the first album.
Mm.
And he was like, "Yo, nobody's asked me that. Thank you for asking." Like, just shit like that goes a long way. Like, just being a human being with people. And at the same time, but that also goes for artists.
Mm.
And that also goes for people on the other side who need something. I just got into, like, yesterday into a DM pissing match with an artist. Like, he hit me up and he's just like, "Yo, will you listen to my music? Will you listen to my music?" And every time he hits me, I'm just like, don't have the time, I'm busy, or it's just like I'm watching a movie. I'm just not in the mood to listen to music, because music can't be forced upon you either.
Right.
Like, I gotta trust me. If I'm not in the mood to listen to your music, and you can send me the greatest song, it's just not gonna hit me the same, because it feels like work. Like, I have to be in the mood. So he hit me to listen to his music, and one time I hit him back. I said, "Hey, man, just try back in another week. I'm really busy. Da da da. If I can get to it, I will. I just haven't gotten to it."
Mm-hmm.
So he DM'd me again and asked me to listen to the music, but I didn't have anything to say. So I guess I left him on red, but I didn't respond. And then he just started like cursing me out. Like I was like, first of all, if you was just a little bit patient and just waited to the time, like, I'm not a jukebox neither, bro. You can't just pump a quarter in and play a record and expect a response. So that human interaction comes from both both sides. So, I would employ artists to do that, or even up and coming journalists who are sending pitches or whatever. It's like, just because I'm very happy with the life I live doesn't mean that, a lot of times I don't have free time or luxury time to kind of go through it. So it just has to happen when it's meant to happen.
For sure. What advice do you have for artists that are trying to get press? I mean, you just talked through some experiences, and I think, but like in general, like how should artists think about approaching getting press?
I mean, great story. You should have a great story to tell, like something interesting, something that makes you stand out. Consistency, and patience. And look, the fact of the matter is, I think artists now have to find a way to build their own fan base. I think back in the day, again, when we talk about print journalism, you could be an Eminem and have somebody have a Riggs Morales find your demo in a box and then put you in the unsigned hype column. And people would check for you because you were, I don't know if you guys know about the source in the unsigned hype column, but Eminem is an alumni from there. Common came out of there. Capone and Noriega, like they birthed a lot of rappers in that column. It doesn't work like that the same now. Like, you really have to develop a fan base. It's not enough just to have great music. It's like, what do you have? You almost got to be like the Verizon man, right? Like, you got to have a lot of people behind you.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that the game is digital now and runs off of traffic. So it's like, I can write about you, I can interview you. Who's going to watch it? Like, at the same time, you have to understand that me producing a piece of content takes the time, right? Like the hour that it takes to sit down to do it. That's not counting the time that you spend before in pre-production, researching, coming up with the right questions. And then we're talking about editing and posting. And, it takes several hours of time. And if I'm interviewing you, that means I'm not interviewing somebody else. So I hope that people watch it. Like, same thing with you guys in this podcast. Like, I hope people listen. I want people to listen. When it's done, I'm going to tweet the link And then I'm sure you guys want people to listen. You want people to kind of tune in. So artists have to be cognizant of that. So if you have a fan base, it helps. But then, after that, a good story to tell. And I think artists just have to be consistent. Sometimes it's like one song isn't going to do it. Like, sometimes you might hit the Lil Nas X. And even Lil Nas X had songs before Old Town Road that people didn't pay attention to. And then he hit one. But, he had a story and he had popularity and people behind him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Super valuable. When it comes to your own, on the side too, you also are an artist yourself, by the way. Congrats on today's drop, today's
Thank
release.
you. Thank you. Good Friday.
There it
Streaming
is.
everywhere.
There it is. Tune in. How do you go about navigating those two worlds, both like being very involved in the music business side, but then also making sure you're able to carve out the time and kind of thrive and build and grow as an artist?
Yeah, it's tough. But I'm in a blessed position where I can be patient with the music. Like, I don't need the music to make a living. And me dropping music isn't to make a living. I remember somebody told me, I saw somebody like subtweeting me one time when I first started dropping music, and they were like, "Oh my God, like, look at these guys, man. Like, the money in journalism must have dried up because now they trying to drop records." And I'm like, know about you, baby. Yeah, I'm doing all right. Nah, but the music isn't a money play for me, and I really do it honestly because I love it. I've been writing since I was 12 years old. I wrote my first rap when I was in high school, about 17 years old. It was the first time I went into a real studio, and my engineer at the time happened to be Plain Pat, who, if you know anything about Kanye West, Good Music, Kid Cudi. And this is before Plain Pat became the Plain Pat that we know now. So he actually has my demo tape. So this is high school. This is, 15, 16, 17 years old. So
yeah.
I've always been doing music, and, the rules change. I was told and I was made to believe that I couldn't do both. I couldn't be a journalist and be a musician. I had to pick one because it was a conflict of interest. And there's part of that where those lines can blur and it can get sticky. So I understand that. But the game changed a lot. And, I created a freedom for myself to be able to do both. It's tough, but the music comes out the way it does because I love it. It's more of a labor of love. So it doesn't feel like work. Like I'm actually running to the studio because it's almost therapy for me. I don't see a therapist. Maybe I should. But like, just going in and making music is like, I can't describe it. It's the illest feeling to walk into a studio with an idea and then walk out at that night with something tangible. Like, yo, this thing that was in my head now exists as this, a file. I can't touch the MP3, but it exists as a thing, as a tangible piece of art. It's the biggest rush, just the biggest high.
Yeah, when I was interviewed for my first internship, they asked me in the beginning of the internship, as at the time I made music, and they asked me like, do you know if you want to be in the industry or do you want to be on the music side of things? And I was like, the industry side, because I felt like they were kind of testing me to see if I was going to be committed to potentially growing at the company. But I think the world's so different now. Obviously, if you do coexist in those two, sometimes it can be complementary. I mean, we know a lot of A&Rs who are also artists. Like Diddy is the quintessential version of that, right? So what advice do you have for people, especially that are at the beginning of their careers and they don't really know which way they want to go yet, but they know they want to keep both sides somehow. They want to be involved with both.
It's tough. It's tough, and it's still tough even for me. I would say again to move with love and like, because you're gonna have to prove yourself, like, because it is like, yo, are you in here? Are you working this job just to get your shit off, or are you really committed to this job? If I'm hiring you for Genius and you're working on my team, like, I want to know that you're committed. The same way the people that I institute at Genius want to know that I'm committed to them, and that I'm giving it my all. Like, and I believe in Genius and I love Genius and I love what I do, but I love music too. So, it's just going and proving that. It's about being in there for the right reasons. Even still to this day, let's say if I'm interviewing an artist, I don't bring up my music at all unless they bring it up. Like, I'm not, I'm not going to pretend like I don't, but I don't bring it up. I don't send my music to artists. I don't ask for features. Like if it comes, great, and we'll work that out. But I'm not using one to leverage the other. Like they're really as together as it is. We're all in the same industry. It's really two separate things. If most times people are hitting me up like, yo, what's up with your music? Like, yo, why don't you send me stuff? Like I have DJs hitting me like, why don't you ever send me your records? Like I don't have a publicist. I'm not doing press releases. The websites that pick it up, I'm grateful for them. The Two Dope Boys of the world and the On Smashes and the Hip Hops and more are always picking me up, and I'm never sending them the music just because it feels kind of weird. And I don't want them to feel like I'm leveraging who I am in the industry for coverage. And, the same thing with playlisting. I'm not like submitting my stuff for playlists. And maybe I should. Maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot. But, maybe we'll get there and we'll grow to that. But I want to make sure on the music side, I earn everything that I get. And because on the journalism side and the music business side, I earned everything and I worked for everything that I got. And I'll be damned if anybody tried to take it away from me. So, and I'm willing to put in that work with the music.
Yeah. For sure, man. Well, Rob, it's been a pleasure to connect virtually, that is. Hope to meet you one day in IRL, but love everything that you do, man, all the content you put out. Congrats on the music, and very grateful for all the wisdom you shared on the show today, man.
And wishing you and yours good health, man.
Thank you, man. Same to you, man. I hope y'all, like, this is fun. This is amazing. So I hope y'all make it through this quarantine.
It's
y'all
a big compliment.
Start. Yeah, and I've been through some interviews where it's just like, dog, why am I here? Like I like to say yes to things just because it's like I remember what it was like when people turned me down for interviews and stuff like that. And
right.
So, but sometimes it just be like, what are we doing? There's so many interviews that I did that I regret. Like I enjoyed this. And if you don't mind, before we go, I just want to plug. Can I plug just two things?
Yes,
please.
I'm sorry, man. I hate to be this guy. But
no, not at all.
Definitely check out Genius on Apple Music if you haven't already. I talk so much about our Verified series. And, the yellow background. We have a partnership with Apple Music. So you can see those in the Apple Music app as
Congrats
well.
on that, by the way. That's a great partnership.
That was big, man. Like to have that happen, like, I was like, wow, like, what is going on?
Right.
Because I remember when we first made the series, and how we planned it, but we also kind of stumbled into it a little bit. It was building blocks. So
for sure,
that's amazing. And I want to shout out Fuse, also Fuse TV. We have a new TV show on Fuse. If you get the Fuse network, it's called Genius on Fuse, and I'm the host of it, which is crazy too, because like my mom hits me up about that show now. Like all the stuff I've done, my mom doesn't watch any of it because she's like, to her, the internet's not real. She's just like, oh, that's just some internet thing. She's like, oh, that's just some internet thing. And then now that I'm on TV, like, it like legitimizes. Like, I'm like, yo, Ma, I got a talk show. It's called For the Record. And she's like, oh, the internet thing? Yeah. God, cool. But now that it's on Fuse, she's like, what time does it come on? I just saw the commercial with you on it and stuff like that. So It's really amazing, man. So shout out to Fuse, man.
For sure.
The whole team of Genius, man. Shout out to y'all.
Thank you, bro. We'll link that up in the show notes. Well, thank you so much, Rob. It's been a pleasure, my friend.
Peace.
Appreciate you, man. Yo, man, I thought that was a dope interview, dude. I was a little nervous going into this one because Rob is, obviously one of the best interviewers there is in the hip hop world, and me and you are interviewing the interviewer. You know what I mean, as well as the interviewee. But I think we held it down, and more importantly, Rob obviously gave us a lot of gems for people to hear throughout the episode.
100%.
So we really got into, Genius and how he's been able to expand the content section at the company. We got into, editorial, what makes a good story that I think people can learn from. We got into, again, the duality of being an artist and, existing in the music industry at the same time. And I think a lot of people from a lot of different areas, but especially, editorial, will be able to take a lot of valuable information from this interview. What do you think, Sam?
I totally agree, man. I think Rob is an incredibly smart person. I think he's been able to really push forward across a lot of I mean, he's just seen a lot of evolution in the music industry and the media landscape. And I think everything that's happening at Genius is truly world class when it comes to what it means to be a digital media company today. So I think at the foundation of that is content, and at the foundation of Genius's content is Rob. So very grateful that we had Rob on the show today, and think he lived up to the hype. So let us know what you guys thought. As always, please don't hesitate to leave a review. Hit us up on Instagram at Music Business Podcast. Constantly working to bring you this knowledge during these hard times. We're in this together, guys.
All right. See you guys soon.
Yeah, peace.